What the fuck is up, guys? My name is Nick, and I bring you grains of truth. I apologize if you hear some weird noise in the background. They are currently sawing the road outside of my fucking window, and so there's nothing I can do about it. I went out there and said, yo guys, I'm trying to film a video, and then they said, how many subscribers you got? And I was like, 50, and they were like, nah, that's not enough. I don't know what I'm gonna name this video, but we're gonna talk about the PlayStation, specifically the PlayStation 1, and what I wanted to do is do a teardown of the PlayStation 1, and so let's do that. So the first thing that you want to do is, of course, take out the screws on the bottom. Then you can flip it right side up and take the top casing off. Now this is the disk drive, and there's two cables that you're gonna unplug. You want to unplug them from the actual PlayStation. You don't want to unplug them from the reader itself. Then you just lift the reader up. There's another cable right here that plugs into the controller / memory card ports. You want to unplug that guy from both ends, because you just set that to the side. Then there's this other cable right here. Got a clip on it. And you want to unplug it from the PlayStation, and then unplug it from the power supply. And then there's two screws right next to the connector where the cable plugs in on the actual power supply itself. Now, I haven't had this PlayStation plugged in for probably more than 10 years, so I would definitely recommend not doing this and trying to mess around with the power supply if you just had it on, because power supplies can be kind of dangerous, and they can hold a charge for quite a while, so you don't want to shock yourself and fucking die. Then there's just, 1, 2, 3, how many screws? And then there's 4 screws holding down this heat sink, RF shield, I don't know. You just want to take those guys out. And then there's a couple screws holding in the actual controller / memory card port itself. Then you can lift up the controller ports. That's just one module that kind of just set it aside. And you can lift up this shield here. I don't know if it's a heatsink or an RF shield or both or whatever, but it doesn't matter. And then there's 4 screws holding down the actual motherboard itself. So this thing just lifts up. It's one single unit, so you can set that aside. And then there's just these 2 pieces of tin or whatever, and then that's it. So then there's 2 different kinds of screws here. You got this black pile of screws right here, 6 of those. Those, of course, go to the bottom, so that holds the whole thing together. And then this kind of screw. That's just a regular screw, and that's all you need. You just need the same Phillips screwdriver, because both of them are the same kind of screws, just one of them is black, one of them's not. And then, of course, when you put it back together, you get the idea. You just do it in reverse. One thing I do want to point out is these arrows right here. These arrows tell you where screws are supposed to go. So there's a lot of holes, and you might think, oh, maybe a screw goes here. But if there's not an arrow pointing to it, it means the screw doesn't go there. So theoretically, when you put it back together, you wouldn't even really need a guide showing you how to put it back together, because the arrows will just tell you where you're supposed to put the screws. Now you're probably wondering why I just showed you me taking apart a PlayStation 1. And well, the answer will be clear in a second. The PlayStation 1. It came out in 1995 in the US, 1994 in Japan, so it's pretty old. There wasn't really much on the inside of it. The reason I decided to make this video is because I was cleaning out my PlayStation 1, you know, and I noticed something. Wow, this thing is so easy to take apart, way easier to take apart than something like the PlayStation 4, which I also recently did the same thing to it, and Jesus, it was complicated. Now, the thing that struck me as odd is how complicated the PlayStation 4 was compared to the PlayStation 1. PlayStation 1 was really easy to take apart. It's pretty much just fucking unscrew it and then you're good to go. Literally all you need is a Phillips head screwdriver. That's it. And every single screw is the exact same screw. There aren't like 5 different kinds of screws, some that require this type of screwdriver, some that require this type of screwdriver. It's all the same shit. And that's really simple. But it's also really nice for someone who wants to, oh, I don't know, open up their PlayStation to maybe clean it out on the inside. Whereas the PlayStation 4, that shit's complicated. It can be really difficult to get in there and get to the parts that you actually need to clean. A thought occurred to me. Why is it that the PS1 is so simple to take apart, but the PS4 is really complicated to take apart? And I got an even better question. You know how the PS4 has those, like, things that cover up the screws on the back? Why are those there? Why do they have these void stickers that make it so that if you take the sticker off and then you take the screw out so that you can take it apart and clean it or do whatever you want to it, frankly, that voids the warranty. And I've got to itch my arm. And burp. And I was just wondering, why is that? Now, the answer I don't have. Yes, it quote-unquote voids your warranty, but I believe the law is that it actually doesn't void your warranty. Opening it up doesn't allow them to refuse giving you a warranty for that system. It's just that, what are you going to do? Take them to court? No. You are allowed to do it, but you're not allowed to do it. But they don't want you to do it. Regardless of whether you are or not, they don't want you to do it. And that's the problem, is that they did not care. They didn't care in 1995 when the PS1 came out, but they do care now. And the reason that struck me as odd is, why shouldn't I be able to open up my system and clean it out? Should I not be allowed to clean my PlayStation because they don't want me to open it up? And I think maybe 10, 15 years from now, the PS4 is really complicated and there's a lot of roadblocks when opening it up compared... Oh, don't tell me they're sawing the road. Oh, yeah, they're definitely sawing the road. 15, 20 years from now, when I want to open up my PS4 to clean it out, you know, when the PS10 is out or whatever, should it be easier to clean out? Or is it okay that there's so many things preventing you from opening it up because they really just don't want you to open it? And while I was making this video, Sony decided to announce something. The PS1 Classic. And I thought to myself, wow, that's pretty cool, you know, sort of doing this thing with the Nintendo's doing, you know. The PS1 Classic will really only appeal to me if it does the same thing that the NES and the SNES Classic does, right? Where I can install custom firmware and put all of the ROMs that I want on the system. And now I know what you're thinking. Nick, really? Do you really think that they're going to allow you to do that? They're probably not. And I would probably agree with you if it wasn't for the fact that it proposes a question. Should they not allow me to do that? Or should they instead actively allow me to do that? And I know that might sound weird, but think about it this way. There's a Sega system that was made by a company called At Games. It's garbage, but it does a couple things right. Number one, it still has a cartridge slot on it, so if you want to put in your Sega Genesis games, you can do that. But number two, they have micro SD card slots on there. Now, what do you think the micro SD card slot is for? You are correct. It is so that you can put your own games on there. So why shouldn't Nintendo and Sony do the same thing? I think that it falls in line. Same kind of question, right? Opening up my system, installing ROMs on my system, You know, I'm not saying that you should pirate ROMs or whatever, but like I own a lot of PS1 games, and I'm sure a lot of them aren't going to be on the PS1 Classic. And so what if I want to play those HDMI on my new PS1 Classic? I should still be able to do that, and if they put in something like a micro SD card slot, they would be actively allowing me to do that. The question is, should they? Should they allow you to do something like that? Should they allow you to open up your PlayStation or your console so that you can clean it out, or so that you can install a mod chip? I don't fucking care. Should they allow you to put ROMs on your PS1 Classic or your SNES Classic or your NES Classic? Should this be a feature that they allow? Because let me tell you, Nintendo and Sony, they don't want to allow it. They definitely don't, and I understand why. But don't you think that it would be pretty pro-consumer to do that kind of thing? I do. I wouldn't have to be installing custom firmware on my SNES Classic or my NES Classic just so that I can get it to read the ROMs that I put on there. Because if there was a micro SD card slot in there, boom, I just put the ROMs on the micro SD card, I plug it in, and now I've got new games to play. And so I pass the question off to you. What do you think? What do you want to tell me? Do you think that, no, Nick, you fucking stupid, this should never be the case because pirates? Or do you think, you know, Nick, you got a good point, and I never thought about that, because that's what I'm all about. That's it. I apologize if the audio in this video was a little weird. Maybe it's the creaky chair, maybe it's the microphone being in a weird spot, maybe it's the fact that they're sawing the road in half outside. But make sure that you laugh a lot, eat a lot, and have fun doing it. You'll see me in the Spook Fest.